by audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. You sign up for free. You get a free audio book, and it helps to support the show. Tonight we're live on TalkStreamLive.com, HazyRadio.com, PSN Radio, and Wolf Spirit Radio, and also brand new station, TalkSuperstation.com. Then, of course, Awake Radio, the whole Awake Radio family of AwakeRadio.us, AwakeRadio.uk, 1800 Online, ShazazRadio.com, and a whole bunch of other ones, too numerous to mention. But even Walking Turtle has their own station there, I think. I think we're on there. Then, throughout the week, we're replaying on ParaX Radio Saturday night, 7 p.m., Penny Entertainment on Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Then throughout the week on Firehorse Radio, and, of course, Shake and Wake with the good old Rick and Annie. Now, our shows last week with Catherine McDonald and Katie Beers, they're finally up on the YouTube channel. They're up on Spreaker. They're up on iHeart. But going forward, we're going to have to make some changes. I'll make an announcement about this later on tonight, about going forward, what we're going to be doing with the archives and with the YouTube stuff. Because I got to be honest with you, we're really struggling here. We're not getting that many donations. And people, they're complaining about not having the good old archives up quick enough for them. Unless we can get like 10,000 new subscribers on YouTube, and we can get like 10,000 a week going to the Opperman Report blog and clicking on those little ads on there, we're going to have to do something with maybe paid archives, or just selling the archives on iHeart on iTunes, something like that. Okay, tonight we got a big show. We got good old John Potash, one of our most popular guests we've ever had, and he's written a couple of really impressive books. The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, U.S. Intelligence's Murders Targeting Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, the Panthers, Hendrix, Marley Rappers, and Linked Ethnic Leftists. Also, he has a new book. I don't think it's out yet, but it's about to be. Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA Murderous Targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lenin, Cobain, Tupac, and Other Leftists. So we're going to have good old John Potash on for about an hour. Then we're going to have Cisco Streetlove is going to be coming on. He's going to continue this discussion because we're going to be talking tonight about, murders of MLK and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And Cisco is the author of Yesterday's Shame, the Atlanta Child Murders. And let me tell you something. Both of these authors we have on tonight are big supporters of the show. So if you're listening tonight, please go to Amazon and write a nice review about their books, and give them a like on Facebook, whatever you can to keep them going. So, John, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Thanks for having me on, Ed, and thanks for the compliment. That was really nice. I'm glad. I hope your listeners like what I have to say.
Oh, yeah, people love you. Oh, for sure.
Thanks a lot.
And people love to the people you've recommended to us. So, okay, now I saw on Facebook. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your books and your work and your private life and stuff?
Sure. Well, I'll start with my private life.
There you go.
I work as a counselor, just doing psychotherapy for a living. And I started out right after college in the late 80s, early 90s doing addictions counseling, after getting a psych major in college. And I happened to, the start of my first, when I was doing addictions counseling, I started seeing the fact that drugs were being used in a way to undermine people's lives, I felt. And I was doing social activism on the side, and so I started writing an activist novel after writing an activist short story that I read with some of my poetry when I was doing poetry readings in Baltimore. And somebody published the short story, and I decided to turn it into a novel. And that's when I was interviewing somebody for doing what we call psychosocial evaluation for therapy, and he said my father was a Black Panther killed by the police, and so I had made him into a character in that novel, and that was the beginnings of that book, Drugs as Weapons Against Us. But I had so much nonfiction in the fictional account that I decided to make it into two books. The fictional Drugs as Weapons Against Us, and then the book after that's going to be the novel, the fiction. And so I took a tangent from that, though, because of the fact that when writing the novel, I realized nobody's going to read something from an unknown, but people, of course, will read about celebrity. And when I was researching the Panthers, that led me to the story of Tupac Shakur, because his parents were the leading Black Panthers in New York. And so that led me to investigate his situation and the fact that he was only pretending to be this gangster in order to appeal to gangs and politicize them. He was really a lifelong revolutionary or lifelong leftist radical. And so then I saw all these tactics and personnel that were used against him were used against other black leaders, more traditional black leaders, such as Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And so I thought I thought here's a chance to use the celebrity Tupac Shakur, who a whole new generation are so enamored with, and for good reason. He was a brilliant guy behind his gangsta facade, and great music, great lyrics, but a whole new generation would be interested in reading about him, and I can convey the history of black leaders and their great deeds, along with the targeting of them by U.S. intelligence for their attempts to change society for the better through the life and times of Tupac Shakur and his family.
Yeah, because until I heard about you and your book, I had no idea. And you would think, like, an idiot like me with the last name Shakur, you'd think I would spot that right off the bat, because, Matula Shakur and Saddam Shakur and all the famous, Black Panthers named right. Shakur. I don't know what I was thinking.
You're not alone. I've run into so many activists that just didn't put it together that this could be, Tupac could be something different than what he's conveyed as in the media. So many people just didn't put it together. So many people thought, we just took on this name to sound, different, or to sound unique, or to sound, Afrocentric in some way. But no, he was born into this family, and the name's very significant, of course, because his full name's Tupac Amaru Shakur, and his mother was so, incredibly dedicated to worldwide activism that she named him after the last Incan leader to die, fighting the Spanish invaders, and, so she knew her history of activism worldwide. And so she named him, after Tupac Amaru, and he was, a lot of people live up to their names, or try to, even subconsciously, and he was destined to try to live up to that, and that's the way he felt. I mean, at 13 years old, this Reverend Daughtry in New York, where he was living at the time, asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, a revolutionary, because that's all he knew. His imprisoned stepfather, Matula Shakur, would not, allow himself to gain parole, which he would have if he just renounced his politics. That's what I heard they would tell him at the parole board. If you renounce your politics, you have a chance of being paroled. Otherwise, you're never getting paroled. And so he stayed in jail rather than renounce his politics. And the same thing was happening with Geronimo Pratt, who was Tupac's godfather. And a lot of people, of course, say that Tupac's auntie Asada Shakur was Tupac's godmother. It was officially his godmother. But his whole family were incredible activists. And so, it's an interesting story. His life in his short 25 years is a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess it's covered up, because, the fact that that's his stepfather who was in prison right now, Matula Shakur, over those crazy, armored car charges. He wasn't even involved in this at all, but the way I understand it is supposedly he was gonna receive some money, and they give a guy 60 years in prison because supposedly he's gonna get money. Amazing.
Right. They use that conspiracy to be involved in these kinds of crimes versus actual involvement. They use that, he conspired with the people that were involved. And granted, he was in ideological line with the people that were involved, and the people that were involved did want to give the money to help the healthcare in the South Bronx and in his area, and they wanted to help his acupuncture detox and help his clinic. And who knows, they might have been giving money, to that. I really don't know for sure, but to put someone in jail for 50 years for conspiring, and yet to not have a single piece of physical evidence, even though they had his life completely under surveillance.
Right.
You know, they had his house bugged, and they had everything. You know, and they say everything was organized in his home, and they had his house bugged, and they couldn't come up with any evidence in court to show that he was the ringleader, like they called him, Potash Shakur. But it's an incredible story what was actually, happening to Lincoln Detox, and how they killed the first director. Well, the first director was found murdered, and the first director's last name was Taft, and he was apparently a descendant of the President Taft. But they found his body, and he was, killed, and there was heroin slipped under his skin. It wasn't in his bloodstream, but it was under his skin, as if a message to say, they were trying to pretend like he was addicted to drugs, but it was obvious it wasn't in his bloodstream, so he hadn't used the drugs, but they did this strange thing of inserting the heroin under his skin as if to send a message. And then they did the same thing with the top lawyer for the clinic, who was Assad Shakur's lawyer, who Assad said had just come upon evidence that should completely clear her of that last charge. They tried to get her on so many other charges that all, were dismissed or she got found not guilty of. And finally, this last charge with the incident where they killed Zaid Shakur, Tupac's uncle, and then they sent Sundiata Akali to jail. In that incident, they of course shot Assad, and they beat her at the scene in New Jersey when they pulled them over on the highway.
Right.
And so Assad was just about to, Stanley Cohen said, I got the evidence to get you off in court. And then he's found dead with all his papers stolen, all his stuff stolen from his home. And there was cocaine, again, slipped under his skin, but wasn't in his bloodstream. So he wasn't using cocaine. It was somehow inserted into his body under his skin. It was very strange, what happened to him and Taft. So there was an incredible war on this Lincoln Detox. And because it was so successful, I argue, that's what Potash Shakur said. The studies said that it was extremely successful at treating drug addiction in New York. And I was lucky when it finally opened back up again years later. I was lucky to be able to study there, study acupuncture there, and acupuncture for detox, for drug treatment. But it's wild, the war that was waged on that Lincoln Detox and Potash Shakur and all.
Now, when did you go over there for your acupuncture training?
Well, I was working in the New York area from it was about 1998 to 2002. Then I left New York for about 2-3 years, and I came back, and I was there from 2005 to 2007. And I did the acupuncture training in 2005 or 6 now. I think it was 2006, actually. Yeah.
Now, what do you think about yourself having any kind of harassment, FBI harassment or surveillance? Yeah,
I'm not sure. I just don't know. I've got to...
Well, I guess you don't read my Facebook page then, because you remember when you sent me a book and a CD?
Yeah.
Yeah, that package was totally ripped open. I got the pictures.
God, I've heard so many stories like that, Ed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, see, now, you gotta understand, I get evidence to that same post office box all the time from sheriff's departments, from digital forensic labs all over the country, even from the FBI I get. Wow. The only other time I've had a package tampered with was when I was involved in the Sarah Palin case. That one had a poke hole. Never before, and yours was ripped open. I got the pictures on the Facebook page, on my personal Facebook page. So yeah, I would say that you got a little attention there. Yeah.
The first guy, a Delaware State professor, said he wanted to do PR for me, and so he started telling me who to send my book to, and they experienced the same thing. They would get the package and it'd either be ripped open, and one person maybe actually got the book, but it was messed up. Another person just got the package without the book.
Yeah.
So this is happening. Yeah, this is happening a lot. Sadly enough. I'm sorry I didn't even realize that it's so hard to have time to follow different people's Facebook pages.
No, I know. I think most of the content was in there, but I'm having the same problem too. Yeah, when I mail my book out too, a lot of times someone will say, hey, I didn't get the books. I'll mail them another. I know I sent the book. I mail them another one, and then they didn't get that one either. So
wow.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, what are you going to do? Now, just recently, I saw you did a presentation about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X.
I did. I did that actually in February, this past February, I think it was, with John Judge.
Okay.
And that was, the late John Judge. It's sad. He died probably within 30 days of that presentation. And some good activists were really trying to make things work for him. He lives in Washington, D.C., and a friend of mine named Lou Wolf, who was a co-publisher of Covert Action Quarterly, really did some good work in trying to get him. John Judge had a stroke.
Right.
He lost his voice. He still had like a little bit of a voice, but it wasn't good. But he started coming around. His voice started coming back. His movements started coming back. Not perfectly, but he could start to move a little bit, at least one side of his body. And so Lou Wolf was working with his partner, a woman named Maryland, who they were trying to get him into another rehab, and all of a sudden he just went downhill and died. It seemed like he was getting better, and all of a sudden it got much worse and died really quickly. And that was very sad. But he got C-SPAN to cover that event at the law school in Washington, D.C. And so it was pretty amazing to get on national television with that event. So I was very happy about that. It was my first national exposure like that. Yeah.
Okay, now do you do those kind of presentations often?
No, this was sheer chance, luck, to get a national exposure. But no, I was doing that kind of presentation with John Judge. I did it with him, I guess the first time in 2011, I think it was, or 2012. We did about 3 of those, or was it 2 of those? We did 2 or 3 of them together around Malcolm X's birthday, yeah. And I did, there's other times I did it with Jared Ball and also I don't know if, that Zach Kondo was there all the times, but he might have been there one other time. And, but for the first time was at Howard University, and I was lucky enough to have Cynthia McKinney, speak there with me too.
Ah, very nice.
So she brought a lot of people in there, and, it was a good crowd at Howard University. And, so it was good to reveal, what I thought was the U.S. intelligence course murder of Malcolm X, assassination of Malcolm X. But this Babazak Kondo is generally a good guy, and he also, of course, thinks U.S. intelligence played a part, but he puts a lot more emphasis on the Nation of Islam.
Right.
And look, it's possible Nation of Islam did play a part, but I think they probably did, but they were infiltrated by the FBI, so it's hard to always know. You really can't say Nation of Islam because it was the people in the FBI that infiltrated Nation of Islam, and they were the key players in Malcolm X's assassination. So really, most of the blame should be more on U.S. intelligence than Nation of Islam.
Yeah, we actually have Cisco Streetlove coming on after you tonight, and his father was a member of Nation of Islam, and he believes the Malcolm X thing was Nation of Islam. But again,
that's interesting.
Yeah, but again, like you said, man, there's so much infiltration.
Right.
I think at some of these meetings, everybody in there is FBI.
Yeah.
Half of them don't even know the other ones are. They're all trying to set each other up. When you see these cases, it's always that way. So now, what did you put together on Martin Luther King?
Well, with Martin Luther King, I think, of course, William Pepper is the definitive source on Martin Luther King, and I say that because Martin Luther King's family thinks William Pepper is the definitive source on what really happened to Martin Luther King. William Pepper is was a white journalist who went to Vietnam, recorded the atrocities, either took photos himself or had a photojournalist with him taking photos, and brought them back in about 1966 or so, and showed them to Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King was so distraught over him. Pepper said he cried over these photos of what was happening to the Vietnamese. And Martin King was broadening his perspective to include, really serious, anti-war organizing and anti-war talks. And he had a hard time coming out officially against the Vietnam War, though, because he knew that he would be ostracized by fellow reverends, fellow priests, and funding sources for his marches on civil rights. But by 1967, by April 4th of 1967, he decided he had to go completely public, and he gave this famous speech at Riverside Church, calling the United States the biggest purveyor of violence in the world. And of course, it was the 1 year anniversary of that speech that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And Pepper thinks it's not a coincidence. Pepper thought that it was on purpose to convey a message. And so with King, and well, again, the Martin Luther King's family, his surviving wife and kids, then enlisted Pepper to represent them in a historic court case in 1999. So the lead up to that is that in 1978, after King was assassinated, and they said that James Earl Ray was the lone gunman, Pepper forgot about it, basically, in terms of he didn't investigate himself. He was, of course, highly distraught when his friend died. Pepper went to law school and got involved in international human rights law. Then in 1978, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, who was the vice president of the the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that was King's group that King had started, came to Pepper and said, would you come and represent James Earl Ray? Would you please interview him, interrogate him, because we think that he actually is not guilty and that someone else was behind King's assassination. And so Pepper wasn't sure what to believe about it all, but he went and before he interviewed James Earl Ray, though, he said, I want to investigate this myself. He spent actually 10 years investigating the case, and he found enough evidence to think that, James Earl Ray didn't do it. And then he interviewed James Earl Ray, and he found that James Earl Ray refused to plead guilty, and but the government kind of signed a lawyer to Ray that refused anything Ray had to say and just said, we'll take a plea deal so that this never comes to court. And but Ray wanted to go to court. Now, so here was Pepper investigating for 10 years. He then tries to represent Ray to get in court to get the what he found out in court, which is that the government was really behind Martin Luther King's assassination. And so 10 years later, come 1988, he tries to get in court. It's refused. He then gets a documentary. He helps BBC make a documentary on it, which reveals some interesting things there, which is one of the people that Pepper interviewed, a guy named Myron Belay, was the driver for New York Mafia boss Sam Giancana.
Really?
I'm sorry, Sam Giancana, yeah. And he said he was at a meeting where the FBI and CIA agents who were working already with Sam Giancana and the Gambino boss were sitting with them, having a meeting. They were talking about the regular gun running that they were already involved in. They were talking about the Cuban operations to try to kill Fidel Castro, which they had already been involved in. And they brought up at that meeting, which Myron Belay was also present at as Sam Giancana's driver, the fact that, I just want to tell you, we have $1 million contract out, and we'd like to offer it to you to help assassinate, Martin Luther King. This was in about 1967 or so, and they refused it. They said, no, we're not going to take that contract. And it was just amongst the conversation, and they passed through. They kept talking about the other operations. So then you have other witnesses that say that that a guy named Carlos Marcello, the mafia boss of the kind of southwestern United States, he's the mafia boss of New Orleans, but he also covers Texas, and he covers all Louisiana and another state around there. He took the contract. He took the $1 million contract. He then subcontracted out to a guy named Liberto. Two brothers named Liberto controlled the Memphis area. And so then there's a witness who heard Liberto, one of the Liberto brothers, on the phone say, when he gets out, when he comes out the balcony, shoot the son of a bitch. And this was just minutes before, Martin Luther King was actually shot and assassinated. But Pepper has much more than that. He's got the fire department chief saying that psychological operations agents came to his fire department and said, we're supposed to be positioned on the rooftop, and he let them go on the rooftop. He's got Memphis police talking, he's got the names of the Memphis police that met regularly in Lloyd Jowers, in the restaurant right next, attached to Lloyd Jowers' rooming house. Now, Lloyd Jowers' rooming house is where the shot came from that actually assassinated Martin Luther King. Now, the government claimed that James Earl Ray shot from a third-story window, a bathroom window, to kill Martin Luther King. But a witness, Earl Caldwell, who worked for the New York Times and was assigned to Martin Luther King that weekend, to what he says, the New York Times told them, we want you to nail King, slam him and smear him and make him look bad. But Caldwell was there, and he heard a shot, he looked out, he saw smoke come up from where a gun was fired, and it was coming up from the bushes. Okay, not a bathroom window in the rooming house, but the bushes below that on a ledge. And that ledge was parallel with Martin Luther King's balcony, so where Martin Luther King was killed. And so then he saw men run out from the bushes, and other witnesses saw men come out from the bushes and jump down from the area of the wall to the street and run into a police car.
Oh, get out of
here. That witness said he thought that, did they catch their man? But no, they didn't catch their man. The police car was, giving the getaway. Lloyd Jowers even admitted, though, that the police chief and this guy named Arkin, the guy named Sam Evans, who was a police inspector, and a guy named Merrill McCullough, who was part of U.S. military intelligence, all would meet weekly at his at the grill right attached to his rooming house. And they would plan on the assassination. And Jowers ended up admitting this because the Martin Luther King family brought Jowers to court in a civil lawsuit with William Pepper representing them in 1999. And they called the government co-conspirators to the assassination of Martin Luther King. And at that trial, Pepper brought all these witnesses I'm talking about now. But he also brought witnesses such as a guy who was a big-time witness in the Iran-Contra hearings and was brought up by the government in the Iran-Contra hearings and was considered an expert witness because he was a member of the Special Forces group. And he said on film he was actually sick in 1999 when Pepper wanted his testimony, so he had to film his testimony and put it on in court. But he said while he was on his deathbed, he said while he was very sick in court on that film that a good buddy of his named J.D. Hill was also a member of the Special Forces group, and he was positioned on a water tower as part of a triangulation shooting to make sure in case that the government man who was actually a Memphis police sharpshooter in the bushes, in case his shot didn't effectively kill King, then he was supposed to take a shot, and kill and actually finish off the job. And on the other position, Pepper got testimony from a guy named Warren, who was positioned to have the third of the triangulation shooting to finish off the job in case, the other people didn't finish off the job of killing King, of assassinating Martin Luther King. And the guy Warren actually gave his the papers that were part of his order to be there in Memphis, in that position to, be the sniper to kill King. And Merrill McCullough's job was to be an undercover agent to infiltrate a group called the Invaders, who were part of King's group in Memphis. And so he was a black agent, undercover agent, And so he was supposed to run to King's body to check on his life signs, according to Pepper, and he did, and they have him on film. And he was identified as the only one that's not supposed to be wearing a tie, because all the other people in King's group were wearing ties. And so he would not be wearing a tie, so the snipers would know not to shoot him and not to kill him. And so he checked on the life signs, and then he signaled to who he needed to signal to say the job was successful. And that all occurred. And so you also have the psychological operations people on top of the firehouse that are taking pictures of it all. And the reason they're taking pictures of it all, Pepper said, was to then finish off the job within a year or two. They were going to kill everybody who was involved in that operation who wasn't, who they didn't trust. And so the killing started with the Special Forces group snipers. And so they heard wind of it. There was actually two in each position, two Special Forces snipers in each position. One was with J.D. Hill, one was with Warren. And when they started the cleaning up of the job, the other ones went to South America to hide out because they were scared to death. But Pepper luckily got in touch with them. It's a long story of how he got in touch with them, but he got in touch with them and got their testimony, and they got to read their testimony in court. Claiborne Carson, Stanford University professor who's head of the MLK project, over there, read their testimony in court and said this is legitimate evidence, and so that's just some of the evidence.
Yeah, Pepper did an amazing job there. Let me ask you a question.
He really did.
Now, which one of these trials was the one that Judge Joe Brown from the TV show was involved in? What was his involvement in all this?
That was the 1999 trial. So I'll just tell you about one more witness before I tell you about Joe Brown. So another witness was Betty Grabo. She was the girlfriend of Lloyd Jowers, and so she said on that day when King was assassinated, she went to see what Jowers was doing. She went into the rooming house and went to the kitchen, and Lloyd Jowers came running in from the back door from where the shots were fired, with his pants muddy from being out there, and he had a gun in his hand that was, it looked like it was just shot. He broke it down into two parts, put it in a bag, looked scared to death, and she kind of testified to all this in court. And she also testified that he had, in effect admitted to being involved in the shooting and, the assassination of Martha King. Now, another girlfriend who was involved with another man who was part of the assassination attempt heard that intelligence operative admit that he was part of the government assassination of, Martin Luther King also, and she also testified in court. Now, Judge Joe Brown was an expert in weapons, an expert in guns. And so he testified to the fact that the, bullets in Martin Luther King that they found did not match the gun that they claimed was the gun that James Earl Ray shot, to kill Martin Luther King with. So they used a dummy gun to blame James Earl Ray for the shooting.
So Judge Joe Brown was a witness?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was a judge in one of these trials.
Well, he was a witness in this trial. He might have been a judge in one of the TV trials. There was one or two TV trials. I know that. But he was a witness in this 1999 historic trial, and it's an expert witness.
Now, what about there's a video floating around where one of the men on the balcony, what's his name?
Reverend Cowles.
Yeah, right.
Reverend Billy Cowles. Yeah, I mean, you want me to tell you about that? You've seen it already, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I'll tell your listeners. Yeah, well, Reverend Billy Cowles was another undercover agent. It's incredible how many undercover agents they had in this whole operation. But he was a local reverend and in the Memphis area, and his job, was obviously to knock on the door, bring Martin Luther King out to the balcony. And so years later, in that video you're talking about, he's telling his parishioners, he's like making a big public speech, actually, and he's talking about the time when he was last with Martin Luther King. And he says, so when only after, he says, so I knocked on the door and Martha King came out and we were talking, and only after I moved down the railing a good ways to give the shooter a better shot was Martha King assassinated. So he says something like that publicly by accident. And,
right,
but that
out.
really was his job.
Yeah, it
slipped out, right.
He said, I stood aside to give him a clear shot.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's amazing how people will confess. People want to confess, and when,
yeah.
You had to be friends with King at the time. They had to be personal, and still he sold him out, like a.
Well, yeah, I don't think he was really friends with King. I think he was just a loose associate of King's.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think he was actually friends. I mean, there was a photographer that followed King around.
Right.
That was an informant, and he might have been closer friends with King, possibly. But Collins was just an associate, from what I've heard, what I've read about him. But it's just pathetic. It's just, sad and pathetic. He was probably offered lots of money, and he just, he was easy to buy. But, people like Ralph Abernathy and Andrew Young and those good people were very close and not up for sale, and were really strong King supporters and not up for sale. Now, Jesse Jackson, I hear, is another story, sadly enough. William Pepper's third book, in a video I saw in a speech he gave, was supposed to be about revealing what Jesse Jackson's really about. I'm sorry to say. I didn't know this until actually just a week or two ago when I saw a speech by Pepper in New York that where he said that his third book is going to be revealing that Jesse Jackson actually first got recommended to get a leadership position by Strom Thurmond, of all people.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's ugly stuff, this stuff, the things he has, the evidence he has on Jesse Jackson.
Well, the Jesse Jackson today, I don't think anybody has any doubt that the guy's a total sellout,
I don't even know enough about him today to even say.
Well, I heard that he got his son that senator's position by agreeing not to run for president anymore. And when he was negotiating that, he wanted his son to be senator. They made that Senate position. In Washington, D.C., didn't have senators before then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they made that for his son. And also, too, he said he wanted his own plane. He wanted a plane so he could travel around. And then he would agree not to run for the Democratic president anymore. I guess he got that from the Democratic committee.
That's interesting. I didn't even realize that. It's wild.
And man, all the stuff about Al Sharpton being FBI, right?
I did hear about that, but I do argue though that as much as some of these black leaders are, could be implicated for involvement with FBI and at different times in their life, I think that the government is still worried that they might do, say some radical things, do some radical things, and it's a rightful worry. Even some of these guys like this undercover agent Louis Tackwood, way back when during the Panther era, he ended up blowing the whistle, and he wrote a book about everything that he saw and was involved in working for, police intelligence and FBI intelligence. And it's called The Glass House Tapes, his book, talking all about Los Angeles's, kind of, police intelligence unit targeting so many black activists there in Los Angeles.
Interesting, yeah, and it seems too that the FBI is more concerned with black radicals or black activists than they are with any other kind.
Well, I think they're concerned with white, leftist radicals too, except they know that it's harder to get away with. It's like, they can be more brutal to the black activists, and not worry about it coming back on them. But when they're brutal with white activists like Judy Barry, for example, when they, I believe they really did plant the bomb under her car that
right,
made her paralyzed, and she died maybe 5 or 6 years later. She ended up going a long way because it was a white woman. She, got a lot of sympathy from a lot of politicians and a lot of support, and she was had a really sharp, great organizer, great sense of humor. And she got a lot of support behind her and did some great research for herself, and just got a lot of mainstream political support too that ended up getting the special agent FBI Special Agent Richard Held fired, or he actually got him to retire early, and he was supposed to be a rising star in the FBI. And so I think it's just harder for them to get away with it when they target white radicals.
And that was the Earth First, right?
Right. She was she had led a Redwood Summer whose name was taken after Freedom Summer, to try to lure students over to the kind of San Francisco area, your area, to defend the redwoods from the loggers. And the loggers tried to run her off the road and kill her that way when she was driving with her 2 kids. And when they didn't successfully kill her there, they then had done other psychological tactics, like pin a picture of her playing the violin in her last year of college, and they had crosshairs on it with dog feces smeared on it as a scare tactic. But and people, she said, and other people, researchers said, that that's a known FBI tactic to scare someone to death. But then the evidence is all there that they planted a activation triggered bomb under her car seat that blew up on her, and they tried to pretend like she was transporting a bomb in order to use it on other people.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because a lot of people bug me to do a show about that, because there's a few people out there talking about it. And I don't know, this environmental stuff, doesn't really get me going.
Hers is a wild story, though. It's a pretty amazing story, and was an amazing woman. So it's interesting. One of the, if nothing else, it's interesting that it kind of overlapped this Richard Held and all his dastardly deeds, because just a year later he assassinated. I think he was behind the assassination of Huey Newton, and then for the next few years, I think I show the evidence of how I think he was behind the assassination attempts on Tupac in his first 3 years of life, first 3 years of his career, his burgeoning career. And I show the reasons why, because he was an expert in using the media to set up these operations. He was also an expert in leading in like crowd control and leading mobs to do certain things. So, there's a few different pieces of evidence about Held. But the thing that got him to retire early was Judy Barry's research and work, and the lawsuit that the Barry estate brought against him and the head of police in the San Francisco area also.
Yeah, but back to MLK for a second, though.
Sure.
Now, you think that James Earl Ray had nothing to do with it whatsoever? Any involvement at all?
No, just a patsy. Just an unwitting patsy. And Pepper had him. He was involved in maybe small crimes that just had nothing to do with MLK, and he was set up to be in a certain place at a certain time by the mafia, who it took him the contract that was working with military intelligence. And when I say the U.S. government was involved, I mean all the way up to the Pentagon. Pepper says it's a guy named Colonel John Downey, who worked in the Pentagon, who was in charge, and it was just spread through a number of different groups to play different parts in MLK's assassination. And
James Earl Ray is dead now, right?
He is, yeah.
Now, what about his prison break? What do you know about that?
I heard he escaped from prison once. I don't know much about it. I'm pretty sure he died in 1998, right before that 1999 trial, though. But yeah, I just don't know much more about that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so now we have Cisco Streetlove coming on in about 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to be talking with him mostly about, I guess, Malcolm. You want to give us a story about Malcolm? What happened there?
Yeah, well, the important thing about this Merrill McCullough and him being this undercover agent, now, right after he did his deeds, his horrible deeds with MLK, he was promoted to the CIA. And Pepper documents that. And his actions were very important because they paralleled the actions of undercover agent infiltrator Eugene Roberts. Now, undercover agent Eugene Roberts was part of New York Police's Bureau of Special Services. That Bureau of Special Services was the New York Police Intelligence Agency that worked with the FBI. Now the FBI has overlapping police with overlapping agents with police intelligence divisions in a number of places around the country. For example, up to today, and that's how they carry out a lot of their actions and operations. So these intelligence agencies all overlap. A former CIA member became a head of Bureau of Special Services in New York around that 1960s time frame. He was a CIA operative in Vietnam, and then he took over for that New York Police Intelligence Division when the Black Panthers were getting really big around 1968 or so. His name was Angelo Galante. And so here was Eugene Roberts earlier in the decade, though. He becomes a member of Malcolm X's group there, the Organization for Afro-American Unity. He becomes part of security. He rises up in the security group of Malcolm X. And in his job, I argue, and the scene was set that when Malcolm X was assassinated, a kind of smoke bomb went off in the back of the ballroom, the Audubon ballroom, when it happened. And people looked that way, and someone made a ruckus back there, and right when they did that, people up front, and I argue that these were undercover agents up front, U.S. intelligence agents, took out their guns, and one came from the back and ran up front, and just started shooting. All three of them started shooting at Malcolm X. The crowd got two of those gunmen. One of them escaped, but two of them were grabbed. And they held them for the police, and they gave them over to the police. And police said only one person was given to them. Okay. Now, another aspect of that situation, the Audubon Ballroom, is that every time for the last year or two, when Malcolm X gave a speech, there was tons of police. When Malcolm X gave a speech in the New York area, there was tons of police there. At that particular speech, police totally evacuated, except for the number of undercover agents that were in there. But the uniformed police totally evacuated the place and kept their distance. So now, again, the crowd gives these two, murderers, assassins to the police. The police say they only had one. The New York media even covered the fact that they grabbed two, and then the later editions of the same newspapers would say, only one was grabbed, only one murderer was grabbed. So that's just a sign of the huge cover-up around it all. But, one of the members of the Nation of Islam, a high-ranking member of the Nation of Islam, he had worked his way up, had first given the floor plans to the police to come into Malcolm X's apartment when he had started living with Malcolm X, like earlier in the decade in a first assassination attempt, because the police came into Malcolm X's apartment and shot up his study. But he wasn't in there right at that moment when they shot up his place. So this guy, I think his name is John Ali. He was in Nation. He was one of the infiltrators of the Nation of Islam, but there was a number of them that backed him up to help him rise up in the Nation of Islam. And as much as Malcolm X did have a falling out, of course, with Elijah Muhammad, and he lost respect for Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad, apparently stifled Malcolm's radical activism until Malcolm X got away from his group. I still think, as much animosity that was there, I still think that most of the evidence lies with U.S. intelligence. But again, it could have been undercover agents inside of the Nation of Islam that had done it too. And who knows, maybe there was actually, one or two people from the Nation of Islam that were involved also. I really don't know for sure. But I think the majority, in my opinion, the majority of the evidence lies, says that U.S. intelligence carried out that assassination because after Malcolm was shot, Betty Shabazz had her kids with her, and they started shooting. Betty Shabazz put her hands on her kids' heads and had them crouch down to not get shot. And a woman named Joan Roberts was with Eugene Roberts, sitting right next to between actually Eugene and Betty Shabazz. Right after the shooting was done, she grabbed Betty Shabazz, who's a nurse, while Eugene Roberts went to Malcolm X's body immediately. Betty Shabazz grabbed Joan Roberts back and threw her against the wall and ran to her husband. And by the time she got there, Eugene Roberts was already pronouncing Malcolm X dead. So, I think it's just a horrible event in our history because Malcolm X was such a great leader for
brilliant.
all of us.
Those speeches are brilliant. They really are. Yeah. Now, what about Farrakhan? Farrakhan's involvement in this, or?
I don't know. I don't think Farrakhan is any Malcolm X, that's for sure. But I think he's a brilliant guy. But it's sad that he has been so anti-Semitic at times, and I hear, I've done some talks with some Nation of Islam representatives because a media guy in Baltimore is kind of loosely affiliated with the Nation of Islam. And he loves my stuff, but he ends up sometimes coupling me with these Nation of Islam representatives who are just have some ugly anti-Semitism. And I'm of Jewish ancestry, even though I grew up without any religion. And so it's just, it's ugly stuff to hear.
Right.
So.
Now, but I don't know, man. You don't think that because it seems like Farrakhan too has all kind of connections to Scientology and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know. I don't know what I just don't know enough about him, but there's ugly connections he's got. But then he also does some good, so I don't even know what to say about him. Yeah.
I mixed up with Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
It's so freaking crazy. The whole thing is so freaking crazy. Now, what about, because I know you're in that group that I'm in on Facebook, the Maury Terry group, right?
Yeah.
Right. Now, what did you think about that? What did you make of that stuff about the RFK murder and how the Process Church was hooked up with the Sirhan and stuff like that? Do you ever see any kind of Process people involved in all these other things, in MLK and Malcolm X, and even with the stuff like with Tupac and stuff? And see there? Yeah. What do you see?
Yeah, I don't see Process involved in any of that stuff again, except, I differ from,
okay.
I've said some things in that group that, where I say I think Process is just like they're in the role of the mafia. Pepper says the mafia is used to put some distance between U.S. intelligence and their assassinations. You get the mafia as one level in between to say, oh, well, if anyone finds out anything, we can just say it's the mafia did it, not us.
Right.
I think Process Church is very similar in that way, except the fact that the Process Church is involved in more of the MK Ultra operations, in the sense that they, in carrying out that ritual abuse to cause the kinds of people that they create multiple personality, what they call it now, dissociative identity disorder victims. The old name for dissociative identity disorder is multiple personality disorder.
Right.
They just changed the name. But they as a counselor, as a, psychotherapist, we kind of learn, that between the ages of about 2 and 5 are the most vulnerable ages for the human mind, the human brain. So when you sexually abuse people between those ages, you can split their brain, you can split their mind into 2 personalities, because the repression is so strong of the incredible torture that can go on around that time, the extreme pain from the sexual abuse and physical abuse. And if you add drugs to that mix, sometimes the acid's used, but a number of other drugs are used. You can really kind of fine tune these crazed, these multiple personality people that they create. And so some of these kinds of victims of MK Ultra came out in federal hearings in the 1990s. I don't know if you've seen those videos of those, but a psychotherapist from your area, actually, I think it was around the West Coast area, I think it might have been San Francisco area, came out in these federal hearings and testified with 2 of her patients. And they both testified to the fact that their therapist helped them come to grips with all of their torture as kids. And after being tortured as kids by MK Ultra scientists, and they even named some of the scientists who I'm going to name in my next book.
Okay.
Because it overlaps I argue it overlaps the murder of Kurt Cobain.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So because I know it's going to sound crazy, but I explained it well in my book about how Courtney Love matches I've gotten the testimony now since thank you so much for hooking me up with Hank Harrison.
Right.
But I feel like I got enough evidence, enough to present the fact that Courtney Love was probably an MK Ultra victim. But nonetheless, these actual MK Ultra victims in the same area that Courtney Love was growing up in, they said, they named the scientists, they named the techniques used against them. These have all been documented. Their therapist testified. She said dozens of other therapists called her when they heard what she was doing and testifying with their patients and said, I've come across similar patients. Another psychologist gave a speech at in Northern Virginia, and he gave a speech at a conference of psychologists stating, here is what I found in my patients that have split personality, that they actually went through some of the same, all the same techniques, and you can find them in different parts of the country, showing that this is very uniform and this must be coming from U.S. intelligence. But it particularly comes from victims of the processed church. But even the processed church, they're using the same techniques as U.S. intelligence, implies that they're acting as U.S. intelligence operatives, and it's like a U.S. intelligence front group in doing what they're doing. And it's probably a mixture of British and U.S. intelligence, because British intelligence is always a little step ahead of U.S. intelligence. But either way, they were working together with MK Ultra. Tavistock Institute was doing the same things as MK Ultra. And so that's what I argue was happening with the processed church.
Well, not to interrupt you, but Courtney Love, I had another guest on who knew Courtney Love when she was a kid. She went to the Presidio Middle School.
Right.
Where all that was going on at that time. All was going on at the Presidio Daycare Center.
Yeah, it was going on at the Presidio Daycare Center. I don't know if it was going on at the middle school, but it's in the same area.
Right there.
There's she said her own mother admits that she was sending her to therapy from about the age of 2 or 3 years old, and that they were giving her medications, psychiatric medications that early. And that she was actually abused, at their very early age, somewhere between 2 and 5 or 6 years old. She was getting abused. Now, Courtney Love's mother was sexually abused in her infancy, by her adopted father, who was extremely rich. And so there's a lot more than that, but that's just some of it. Yeah.
Okay. That's going to be an incredible book. Now what's the name of that book? That's
Drugs as Weapons Against Us. And the subtitle is The CIA's Murders Targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendricks, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and Other Leftists.
Okay, when's it coming out, man?
February 20th.
Okay, right around the corner. Okay, you're going to come back, right?
Sure, thanks a lot, Ed.
Okay, great. Now listen, we're down to the last couple of minutes. Unless you want to stay, you can always stay if you want.
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry that my wife's waiting for me downstairs, but I appreciate it. Maybe just for a few minutes though. But I'll just say though that, so with RFK, there's a lot of overlap because William Pepper said RFK had already made entreaties to MLK to be his vice president.
Oh, really?
If he won the nomination, yes. And so, that was even just one more reason to see RFK as such a threat. They were going to have their first black vice president. Who knows? Possibly first black president after that. But, so RFK had become radicalized by his brother's, assassination. And RFK, in that whole situation, there was obviously several people under hypnosis, not just Sirhan Sirhan, who a Harvard psychologist said he was obviously hypnotized, and they used drugs and hypnosis, and he was hypnotized when, he was under hypnosis when he killed, when he at least, fired whatever he fired at RFK. Now there's so much evidence around that Thane Eugene Caesar, the security guard, right behind RFK, was the one that actually fired the shots. I mean, we have pictures of the coroner, Thomas Noguchi, just showing the shots came from behind his right ear, within half an inch of his head. And eyewitnesses said that they saw the security guard, the white security guard, take out a gun and fire 3 times and hit RFK. But all that evidence is ignored. And so, and the police precinct that did the cover-up, one of 18 police precincts, was the Ramparts Division. Right. And the Ramparts Division happens to have a number of undercover agents who were in death row records that also helped with the Tupac Shakur murder, but that's, another story. So anyway, it's just, and then you got that woman, the polka dot dress, who witnesses said she runs out saying, we killed him, and they asked her, this couple asked her, who'd you kill? Said, we shot him, and she said, we shot Senator Kennedy.
You know what, brother? Wait, I got to take a hard break at 6 o'clock because I promised the Talk Superstation Live they like to play news. Okay, so we're going to take a break. We're here with John Potash. Well, I'll tell you about what he wrote when we get back. Okay, sorry about that.
Sure,
and we'll be back later on with Cisco Streetlove too. Okay, right back after this message. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your number one source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com. Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's infinityhomeplans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Women. Okay, now you just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry from these New World Mexican women. You can find their book on Lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women. And it's a two-part book where first part is the love letters, and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact them too as well if you want to get a deal on wholesale jewelry from Mexico from these women. Okay, we are back with the Opperman Report, brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com, Opperman Report, and sign up, get a free book. And, you know, all my other sponsors, too. Hey, you know what? I want to make a big thank you out there to Mike Gray from InfinityHomeplans.com, Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo, and the beautiful women, Maria, down there with the New World Mexican women. I've been going through hell. With my court stuff, with my daughter in custody and stuff like that. And they all came through for me. I have no idea how these people pitched in and helped me out in the past year and the past few months. And thank God I got great news. I'll make an announcement, I guess, because we don't want to waste too much time. But things went really, really good at court yesterday. I got custody back of my kid. Let's put it that way.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, the fight of my life, man. I'm taking
Wonderful.
Oh, man, I was trying to re-elect judges and get him throw people. I was trying everything I had. Yeah, I fought, man. So we're joined by Cisco Streetlove, the author of Yesterday's Shame, the Atlanta Child Murders. And, Cisco, man, what do you want to add?
Oh, I agree with what John presented earlier. I was just going to say, in addition to a lot of the things regarding Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam, and, you know, in regards to the King family, so suffice to say, they really didn't have a chance. Because, like, in the case of, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he wanted to really not shift, but basically continue his mission. And I think the American public does not realize en masse how many fascists are involved in our government and politics. Mm-hmm. You know, how many people just don't want a fair and equal society. And that's what led to his murder. The same people that were, you know, involved in his killing, like Mr. Potash said earlier, you know, they basically, El-Haj Malik Shabazz murder was a piece of cake for them. That was a walk in the park.
Right.
And, you know, when you're talking about the Nation of Islam, I'm sorry if I may offend some people, but it is by and large a front.
Okay.
The goal is to basically, like, corral Black Americans into a niche position, a subservient position, and keep them disassociated with mainstream American society. It's the same thing, even though he invented Kwanzaa, Dr. Malatu Karenga, he was with the United Slaves. And he basically, like you mentioned with, who was it, Louis Tackwood with the Glass House tapes. Yeah. Karenga, he basically had it with the Panthers. He wanted to kill them all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Tackwood definitely said that he was giving guns and drugs and money from the FBI to Karenga. That's what he said. And so that could be true. I'm not sure, but it sounds, it could be true, for sure.
So, trust me, it's true. I believe.
Yeah, I believe it too, actually. Yeah.
But wait, Cisco, you think today's Nation of Islam is like sort of like a trap, trapping young radicals in there and keeping them isolated from a broader movement? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Opperman has been like that for decades.
Okay.
I can believe it too. I could see evidence of it.
Makes sense.
I'm not sure of it, but I could see evidence of it.
Oh, this is the thing, okay? Black Americans have like righteous indignation and resentment, okay? So you want to fight the system. And in especially the North, where you have like the Northeast, the Midwest, you had a lot of black Americans that gravitate toward the Nation of Islam. Why? It was in response to the Catholicism of a lot of the white racists they encountered. They would like suffer some slights, indignities from, somebody who was Irish, Italian, and they would say, oh, I'm Catholic this, I'm Catholic that. So you had a lot of black people in response. They would say, well, I'm Muslim. How about that? Right. And that's what the Nation of Islam, it feasted on.
Yeah, they also basically in jail for protection in jail. They had to join the Muslims to get protection in jail. Yeah. And when it came to El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, I'll call him that. Just like that's me personally. I refer to him in that name since that's the proper name that he carried on to his dying day. That's just like I will never call Muhammad Ali Cassius Clay. But Mr. Shabazz, he wanted to have a more fair society, and he wanted a lot of black Americans with righteous indignation to be outside the box. From the start, if you look at the case of Mr. Shabazz, the problem lies in why, if indeed Elijah Muhammad were pro-black, why would he be incensed by what Mr. Shabazz says the chickens are coming home to roost? Mm-hmm. And then did you ever hear of the Nation of Islam having problems with taxes? Because, God knows there have been enough black entertainers, athletes, that have been taken down by the IRS. You don't hear that with the nation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree.
The current nation is actually a successor organization, as you know. Because when Elijah Muhammad passed, his son Warith D. Muhammad took it to a Sunni forum. And then it was a split. The other son, Silas Muhammad, he had the Lost and Found Nation of Islam. He wasn't pulling a lot of people. And that's when, like around 78, 79, Louis Farrakhan, he took the remaining pieces of the headquarters of Chicago, and he restarted his organization. So for the past few decades, it's been those three factions that sprung from the original NOI, which, by the way, was founded by a non-black person, Farah Muhammad. Mm-hmm. He was what was he? He claimed to be Polynesian. Some people say he was white, and he, just disappeared when Elijah Muhammad came into form. Once he trained them, prepped them, he just slid behind the stage.
Now, Cisco, you grew up in the Nation of Islam. That was your faith growing up?
That wasn't I grew up in it, but it wasn't my faith. No. Like I said, when Elijah Muhammad died, my father left. Because, like I said, a lot of black people were into righteous indignation. And so, after that, my dad, he gravitated, like a lot of people, to Tuesday Lobsing Rampa and, that universal stuff, New Age stuff.
Okay. Now, there are some questions in the chat about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Muhammad Ali.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, he was, with the NOI. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was with the Hanafi Muslims, and there's a horrific story in regards to that.
Okay.
that faction, the Hanafis, he had some words with Elijah Muhammad. Queen Abdul-Jabbar, he gave this man a house for his whole family. The Philadelphia Black Mafia, which was an arm of the NOI, they basically slaughtered everybody in their house, including a little baby.
Oh my God, sorry. I'm so sorry about that phone, guys. I actually have to go. Anyway, I don't even know how to turn that off. But guys, it's very interesting, Cisco. Thanks so much for giving this history. And if you could talk about H. Brown, Imam Jamil Al-Amin's, Islamic sect too. I mean, his Muslim group too. That'd be great because but thanks so much. It was really good talking with you, Cisco. And sorry, my wife's calling for me too, so I gotta go.
I gotta talk to your wife today, man. Your wife is a lot of fun, brother.
Sorry about that.
John Potash, man, the author of. Tell us the name of your books, real fast.
The FBI War on Tupac Shakur and Black Leaders, and the other one's Drugs as Weapons Against Us. So again, I'm sorry about this, the interruption. So I gotta go, but. I will talk to you guys again. I hope to talk to you again soon. And it was really good meeting you, Cisco. And enjoy the rest of your show, guys.
It's a pleasure meeting you, John. Have a wonderful weekend.
We love you, John.
Too,
have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Oh, my God. John Potash's wife sabotaging the show. Okay. John Potash is a really cool guy. I really like him. And he's the author of The FBI War on Tupac Shakur, Black Leaders, U.S. Intelligence's Murder, Targeting of Tupac, MLK, Malcolm, Panthers, Hendrix, Marley, Rappers, and Linked Ethnic Leftists. He's also the author of a book that's about to come out, Drugs as Weapons Against Us, the CIA's Murderous Targeting of SDS, Panthers, Hendrix, Lennon, Cobain, Tupac, and Other Leftists. And I really like John, and I'm hoping, we're going to be putting on some seminars here in Vegas. And I'd love to get him to do a presentation about all the stuff he knows. And Cisco, I'd like to invite you too as well. Now, have you ever done a presentation in front of a group like that before?
No, I haven't, but I would love to.
I bet you could knock it out of the park, man. Do you know how to? And I really do, man. I think that people would be blown away with your encyclopedic knowledge of all this stuff, especially if you can put together a PowerPoint.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, man. So now what was John? He was asking about these other guys, Rap Brown and some other stuff.
Oh, H. Rap Brown, Jamila Al-Amin.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to disrespect. I was laughing because, the story behind Jamil Al-Amin is sort of amusing. He was part of... part of a murder ring.
Wait, let me apologize for a second. Why don't you finish up with the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar story about how everybody was murdered in that house?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Basically, Mr. Hanafi, he basically castigated Elijah Muhammad he basically called him a punk and less of a man. And so the Philadelphia Black Mafia, which was an extension of the NOI, they, basically they had a fatwa. Okay. A lot of the stuff that you see in the Middle East with Islamic extremists, this happened in the black community like 30, 40 years ago.
Okay.
So the Philadelphia Black Mafia, I grew up reading about this, and, to his credit, Sean Patrick Griffiths, he has a book, Black Brothers Inc. But he didn't make this up, this is true. They slaughtered everyone in that home. That was the MO of this particular branch of the NOI. If they did not find the man who they wanted to find, they would kill his family.
Now, it's interesting because you never hear that talked about when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's name is brought up. No one ever talks about this story.
No. As a matter of fact, Hanafi, he held up, it was like one of the first terrorist events, he held up a building in Washington because he wanted the government to deliver the killers to him.
Wait, he held hostages there for a long time?
Yeah.
I remember that story. Okay, now I want to do a show with that story.
Yeah, that's all tied together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And one of the guys, remind you, these are child killers. One of the guys who they suspected of, ratting out on them, they stopped his testicles and hung him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were very brutal. There were quite a few beheadings and murders in the aftermath of Mr. Shabazz assassination and going into the 1970s. As a matter of fact, I'd never forget when they made the Ali film.
Right.
Okay. I believe it was Chris Mortensen, who's on ESPN. He got on the director. He was like, "Why didn't you include Major Coxon in the story, in the documentary?" And what that was about was Muhammad Ali. He had a close compatriot who this guy was a racketeer. He was a black racketeer, known as Major Coxon, the Mage. And he lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Okay.
And, it was very prominent that, Muhammad Ali knew this man. There was a drug deal that went bad. The Black Mafia, they basically went after him. They went to his house, hog-tied him and his family, shot him to death, shot his stepdaughter to death, and they mortally wounded or they severely wounded the stepson and his wife. And it was like the little boy, the youngest son, or the youngest stepson of Major Coxon, got away and got to the authorities. They were responsible for a lot of the crimes in the Northeast when it came to what happened in the black community. They shot up the Club Harlem, killed Fat Tyrone Palmer. I mean, that stuff, I remember growing up hearing about that. They were very brutal. I suspect that they killed a family in Teaneck, New Jersey, the Biggs family. The father, he was in the underworld. He had a nightclub because, they didn't do drug deals in the streets. They did them in a nightclub like you heard. They had it out with him, and, next thing everybody knows, the teenagers, the children, the mother, they're all dead. And, the thing with what John Potash mentioned with Trent Brown, Jamel Al-Amin, he was part of another network in Atlanta, like between the 90s and early 2000s. What they were basically doing is they were shooting a lot of the drug dealers, call girls, but then they were not cleaning up the community. They were actually getting a stranglehold on the narcotics activity.
Okay.
So they were responsible for a lot of the murders that were notorious in Northwest, Southwest Atlanta during the 90s. A lot of these characters, they were more brutal to black people than they ever were to racist whites.
Well, that's disappointing, It really is. You know what I mean, man? Let me ask you a question, man. Do you get discouraged,
No, because, you know why? Because I realize what we're up against. we're up against like some real hardcore, unrepentant, yeah. And, you know, they have used other people as tools. Look, who's the guy? Jim Jones, he spoke in front of the NOI.
That's
before
right.
he operated Jonestown.
The NOI when who was in charge of it though at the time? Malcolm X?
Elijah Muhammad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Louis Farrakhan, he gained his fame. He was Louis the Charmer. He was a calypso entertainer back in the 50s. You could hear it on YouTube. He did a song about Christine Jorgensen, one of the first transsexuals. He was a satirist.
I knew he was.
You know,
I knew he was a calypso
he
singer.
had,
yeah, but I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing.
He had that, that magnetic personality.
Right.
And that's how he got up in the ranks. So, they would use, like, the NOI, the Afrocentrist motif, the more Science Temple, the 5%, to basically get Black Americans out of the hair of the white elite.
But it seems like with the Nation of Islam today, they do have a lot of they get government contracts with their security guard companies and stuff like that. What's the story behind that?
Because they are part of the government.
Right.
It's a movement that was made by and large to keep Black Americans at bay.
Right.
They get government contracts, absolutely. Look, Louis Farrakhan, he's as white and as Jewish as the guys that he berates. He looks like Jerry Lewis's cousin. He wears a bow tie. He plays the violin. He's the most inoffensive Black man on the face of the earth. It's a joke. It really.
What's his motivation then for making? By the way, these so-called anti-Semitic remarks that he makes. Really, when you really hear them in context, they're really not that extreme. I think he kind of does little word games. But what do you think his motivation? Yeah. First of all, what do you think? Do you think they're really anti-Semitic, or what do you think?
It's a show. Look,
right.
Ed Opperman is about power.
Right.
It's to maintain the status quo.
So when he does that little word game stuff that he does it so that he'll be, quote unquote, the boogeyman, right? That people can point to. Right, okay. And that's his little role.
It's just like what you read about with the so-called shadow third position. What the third position basically is, it's a supremacist mindset that Western civilization will be dominated by Judeo-Christian forces. And the Islamist front will have their own caliphate, but they will still pledge alliance with Catholicism. You ever wonder why a lot of the terrorists, they haven't attacked the Vatican?
Well, they did that. They did shoot the Pope, and it was like,
No, that was a front. No, that was a front. The Grey Wolves and stuff.
Yeah,
that was a front.
Well, what do you know about that?
They're all
shooting it.
Yeah, the stuff with Pope John Paul II. Those guys are like neo-Nazis, and that goes into look, the Nazis, they had a faction with the North African Islamists.
Right.
In fact, Prussia was part of the Ottoman Empire. So these people were like jockeying for position. And they put on false flag terrorist tactics. Misfired assassination attempts. It's a game that's played to quell the masses, and in reality, they're all in league.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a commercial break. Okay?
Sure.
We're here with Cisco Streetlove. He's the author of Yesterday's Shame, The Atlanta Child Murders. Cisco's a fascinating guy, and I love you, Cisco, man. I really do.
Likewise, eh?
Yeah, man. But I just... I'm discouraged. I'll be honest with you, man. But we're going to take a commercial break. Okay, we're going to be right back after this with more of the Opperman Report and more of Cisco Streetlove. Yesterday's Shame, The Atlanta Child Murders. And if you can do me a favor, go to his Amazon page and write a good review about his book, man. Cisco's out there putting his butt on the line for years. And we need guys like this to be supported. We'll be right back after these messages. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I am your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. The show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report, and you get yourself a free audio book. And like I was saying, I might as well get into it a little bit now because we're going to lose a couple of stations in a little while. The thing is a little announcement I want to make is that unless we can get like 10,000 subscribers to YouTube and get like 10,000 people coming to the website and clicking on ads and stuff like that to support the show that way, what we're going to have to do is make the archives or the after show like a paid podcast, like $1 a show. Mm. Yeah, I know. Or you have to subscribe to the archives. Because I got to tell you, man, myself, I've been dealing with this custody stuff for the last year. But we couldn't get the archives up the last 2 weeks, because we're on such a shoestring budget here that we couldn't even afford a power cord for a laptop to get the stuff going. Okay, one of my producers here, so and everybody's calling us up complaining, emailing, complaining because they want the show so bad. So anyway, so we're working on that. We need your support to the show. If you want to send a donation, or if you want to sponsor the show right now on TalkStream Live, if you go to TalkStreamLive.com, you'll see we are number 4. Michael Savage is number 1. Mark Levine is number 2. Dark Matter is the Art Bell Network is number 3. We're number 4. Okay, we're beating Alex Jones. We're beating Sean Hannity. We're beating Glenn Beck. All these, what would you call people like, no, we better not even say it. But we're beating all the right wingers, guys, okay? So, if you want, we're fighting for you, man. We were just talking off the air. Cisco's got his butt on the line. Hey, Cisco, now you got a radio show, right? Tell us about it.
Well, I do a show with Tracy Gilmore. I hope she's listening. Shout out to Tracy Gilmore. And, she would always prefer, new callers. And if you want to harangue her, she has a show on blogtalkradio.com. Talk and Chit with Tracy Gilmore.
Talk and Chit?
Yeah.
Oh,
C-H-I-T.
C-H-I-T,
yeah.
Which is like chit-chat, so it's not a bad word.
Yeah.
And Tracy Gilmore, no, when is it live? When can people catch it live?
She's been pretty busy lately, but it's usually like Tuesday through Friday or Saturday.
Oh, almost every day then.
Yeah, and she's on the left side of things. She lets it all, fly, but, she's real good. And, hey, if you want to get into an argument with her, just check her out. If some of your listeners.
Okay. Okay, so Cisco Streetlove is on this show with Tracy Gilmore. Yeah, and it's on almost every day. Talk and Chit, CHIT. It's on Blog Talk Radio. So I know a lot of people love Cisco Streetlove because he's one of my most popular guests. People love him. So you want to check him out. Check him out over there. But his book is called Yesterday's Shame: The Atlanta Child Murders. It's available on Amazon. I've been so busy this week, I didn't get a chance to do the blog post that we normally do to promote the show and to promote people's books. But I'll have that up on the Opperman Report blog probably tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow. You know, we'll get going on that. A couple more little announcements real quick while we're still on all the stations. I'm hooked up with a company called truthfunders.com. And it's just like GoFundMe and Indiegogo and Kickstarter. It's a crowdfunding site. They're brand new. And we just launched our crowdfunding campaign. And what it is it's Opperman films. We're going to be making documentary films. So we're looking for funds to raise that. And one of the first films we're going to be doing is a documentary about the West Memphis 3. Okay? And we're going to, I know everybody involved in the case, and we're going to be bringing out all the facts, the real facts in that case, to counteract all the lies that you see over there in the Paradise Lost and all that kind of stuff too. And then we have other plans too on A Son of Sam, about the Process Church film, and also, with, the other one is, Mark David Chapman and the John Lennon assassination. So check us out on truthfunders.com. Go there tonight, check it out, go to their Facebook page, and you could see our campaign, for the Opperman Report, the Opperman Report, new, documentary films that we're going to be producing. Okay, Mr. Streetlove, where do you want to go? You want to go back to Andrew Young? You were saying some stuff off the air about Andrew Young with
Oh yeah, he wrote a letter, a character letter, in honor on behalf of Michael Davis when Davis was arrested the first time.
Now, who is Michael Davis? Who is that?
Michael Davis was basically one of the biggest pornographers in the country, and he ran a criminal empire, and he was basically a homicidal wackadoo.
Really? Okay, now and that was involved with the Atlanta child murders thing?
Yes. Tangentially, his organization is involved, and even though he was incarcerated, if you ever see Sharky's Machine.
Yeah, right. You talked about this, yeah.
Right. That's loosely based off of Davis. Several people, James May, Roger Dean Underhill, Isaac Galante, Kenneth Hanna, and there are some others, suspected. One in particular was a country music producer. Were all killed by Michael Davis.
Really? And was he convicted for this?
Yeah. He was only convicted for the murders of Roger Dean Underhill and Isaac Galante. He was so insane, he broke out of prison. He put a contract on Underhill, broke out of prison, and killed him himself.
I tell you, man, there's some out there people. Let me ask you a question. What do you think? Are you from Atlanta?
I consider myself an East Coaster. I grew up first in New Jersey, outside of New York City, around Essex County, Orange, New Jersey, Newark. And then, my folks moved to Metro Atlanta in the late 70s. So,
okay.
I've been here, but I'm looking to go back
east.
So.
Okay. What's your take on Jimmy Carter? Because Andrew Young worked for Jimmy Carter.
I think Jimmy Carter is a politician, like a lot of other politicians. He to win governorship, he did his own bit of race baiting. He took a picture of his Republican opponent high-fiving a black man. And he was like, oh, see this guy, he's a darky lover. And he won the election.
Really?
But it turned out, Yeah, but it turned out that the guy, he was high-fiving because he was he was an investor in the Atlanta Hawks, and he was high-fiving one of the Hawks after a victory. Jimmy Carter is a shrewd politician. He was ahead of his time, by and large. It was that malaise in 1980 that did him in.
Right.
With the hostage crisis, with boycotting the Olympics in '80, and Ronald Reagan, he was just a bit more shrewd, and it was during that era he was destined to lose.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. And if you look at who was involved in all that failed hostage rescue and the Iran-Contra deals, that was all Bush and Ollie North, man. They were all over that crap, man. And they stole that election, man. They got Reagan in. But it doesn't seem like Jimmy Carter is as bad. He's not in that club with Obama and with Bush and Clinton. And they all seem to be in a really super corrupt club of drug dealers.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, way beyond what Jimmy Carter. What about Jimmy? Do you see Jimmy Carter as being a pedophile like I think some of these other guys are?
No. No, the only thing that I remember, even when I was a kid, there was a buddy of his who ran like a boys detention center.
Oh, really?
And they brought him up on some charges, but it was like a scandal in the late 70s, but, it never stuck to Jimmy Carter. It was this one guy. You had a lot of cases of, like, child molestation, down here. Between Georgia and Florida and then, like, Louisiana, like, for example, John Potash, he was mentioning how Carlos Marcello, he was the big underworld boss. He was basically the mafioso chieftain of the Louisiana, Texas territory. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the mafia, La Cosa Nostra, they ran, by and large, the pornographic trade and, by extension, child pornography. They ran that trade. It was basically the mafia, Michael Davis, who's Greco-American, and a lot of the Jewish gangsters that are that classic Jewish wing of La Cosa Nostra. And they're the ones that help steer, a lot of child pornography. Cause that was one of the cases in Atlanta. Several of the murder victims, they had pictures taken of them that were floated around the country.
Really?
Yeah. Like, that was the whole reason why I did the book. When you hear about Tom Terrell, for example, Uncle Tom, he was a pedophile. He had 2 homes on Gray Street.
Right.
And when they arrested him, they confiscated the pictures that he took of the victims. It was like at least 10 victims visited the Gray Street addresses before they died. They were killed. He was taking child porn pictures of them, and that evidence was conveniently lost.
But you're saying that these pictures were circulated around the country? Have you seen them?
Yeah, they were circulated, like, according to some reports, they were circulated up to Boston.
Really? Because you never had that talked about at all, yeah.
No, they don't talk about that. A lot of the child pornography. That's why I said, if you look at the Freeway Phantom case that took place in 71, 72, you couple that with the Oakland County child killings in 76, 77, Right. Then you go down to Atlanta from 79 to 81. A lot of the murders produced a lot of child pornography and snuff films.
Let me ask you a question. Do you know anything about the Haley Cummings case and the Casey Anthony case down there in Florida?
When children are abducted.
Right.
It's usually for sexual gratification. And if they're not kidnapped to be raised by an insane person, they're often sexually molested or murdered.
Okay, and so yeah, go ahead.
What's missing in a lot of these cases is a lot of context. A lot of these people had the notion that if you could get away with killing the president, like you mentioned earlier with John Potash, if you can get away with killing President Kennedy, you can get away with killing his brother.
Right.
Anybody is up for grabs. So a lot of these sex rings over the past 30, 40 years, that's why they flourished. Trust me, the people that are involved in these rings, they're multi-layered, they're concentric, they're heavily financed, and a lot of times it's all about that visceral effect. That's like, one of the things about the 70s, you had a standardization of color video, color motion, television networks, motion pictures.
Right.
That provided a more visceral effect. And so you had the guys who were around in the 50s, 60s, they had like child porn that was in black and white. They were like, oh, I want this in color. And I want to see some new boys. I want to see some new girls. And so that's one of their motivations. And, that's like that drawing of Mark Stebbins crying, okay? That's part of the Oakland County child killings case.
Yeah.
A lot of people know that, unless you are a really good artist, you can't take a picture of somebody crying because they're in motion. It's like, painting a portrait. So I submit to you that there was a snuff film that was made of his murder, and a frame was frozen, and that's how they produced his picture. And of course, Christopher Brian Bush, he was a convenient patsy. Another thing about these cases is that there's a lot of connections. I don't think I emphasized this before, but there are a lot of connections with Connecticut.
Okay.
Michael Davis went to Connecticut. The Bush family went to Connecticut.
Right.
During the Atlanta child murders, Larry Marshall, he went to Connecticut. The guy who basically created Dragon Con, a serial pedophile, he went from Atlanta to Connecticut. So there's some base in Connecticut that a lot of these child pornographers and pedophiles are running to for safe haven.
I've had Vito Colucci on the show, and he was a cop in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, he went undercover there to bust corruption at the cops over there. You familiar with Vito?
Mm-hmm.
He's a cool guy. He's a Christian guy, and I like him. He uncovered a lot of corruption. The drug dealers in Connecticut would run in the police department. And what do you think about, and I know as soon as we bring up Connecticut, I know everyone's going to talk about Sandy Hook, and I know we're going to get a call from good old Mike Gray about Sandy Hook. What do you come up with, Sandy Hook?
I think that either Adam Lanza was programmed to do that or he is a convenient face. I think that there are some other people involved, just like with the Aurora shooting.
You think there are other shooters?
Yes, because here's the thing, okay, when you have cases like this, there's a convergence between there's some sort of death cult and then you have the sex offenders, and then you have the mafia, and some people who are in the CIA. So on one hand, you have the people who are the power brokers that let these rings continue. But then you have this actual death cult, like what you mentioned about the Process Church.
Right.
They're really into, like, sacrifice. They're really into, like, you know, not just the pederasty, but the actual killing. And that's what you have with a lot of these mass murders. There's some sort of death cult involved. In fact, Larry Marshall and Tom Terrell, they were involved in a cult like that. That's one of the things you hear about with the Atlanta child murders. They were linked with two individuals, Shirley McGill, and his name has been circulated as Parnell Tram. These people were part of a cult that was into sex trafficking, drug trafficking, and according to Shirley McGill, they would have blood sacrifices where they would corral a victim, one of the kids, slit his throat, and have orgies.
Well,
and this stuff is real.
Yeah, I know it's real. But now, do you think they get real power from this?
They believe they do.
I know they believe they do, but what do you believe? I believe they do too.
They do, and there's a lot of people. Look, there's a lot of movie producers. There are a lot of politicians. There are a lot of bureaucrats who are part of these ancient death cults. These cults go back thousands of years, and they want to continue the tradition because to them it's all about power. They get a high, a thrill off of murdering someone.
Right. Okay, listen, we're going to be dropping a couple of stations right now. I want to say goodnight to PSN Radio, and we'll see you next week. We're also going to be dropping Hazy, I believe. Hazy, wait, you know what? Real quick, hold on, Cisco, because I want to give Scott here and I want to give Patty Walking Turtle a chance to promote their shows. Scott, you want to come on real quick and promote?
Sure. Crossing the Void Radio comes on this Wednesday night on the Hazy Radio Network, and this week we have Mr. Dave Cravens. He's one of the infamous Ghost Provokers, the comedy group there, and he actually has a new book, side project off of the Ghost Provokers called The God Thought, and we're going to be talking about that this coming Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope to see you there.
Are we dropping, Hazy? You staying on?
I actually have to go, so yeah, we have to drop.
Good night, Hazy. Thank you very much. Scott, sorry, I forgot to let you promote. I forgot. And Patty, you want to promote your show real quick?
Yeah, sure will. Thank you, Ed. Monday nights, Turtle Talk with Barbara Three Crow on at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, and also on Saturday, Where the Wild Things Grow with me, Walking Turtle, at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. Central Standard Time.
All right. Good night, Hazy. Good night, PSN. And in Talk Superstation, too. Good night over there. And we're going to be on awakeradio.uk, awakeradio.us, and all the Awake Radio Australia. All those stations were still on air, and but we'll be saying good night to everybody else. Hey, we're on tonight with Cisco Streetlove, who is the encyclopedia of every kind of detail, knows everybody's names. Come back in 10 years, Cisco, man. Okay, you're not going to remember because your memory starts going. I was like you 20 years ago, man. But we'll be right back after these messages with more Cisco Streetlove, the author of Yesterday's Shame, Atlanta Child Murders. You can get the book there on Amazon, and we'll be right back. you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, Panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your number one source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Ray at InfinityHomePlans.com. Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's InfinityHomePlans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Women. Okay, now you just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry from these New World Mexican women. You can find their book on Lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women. And it's a two-part book where first part is the love letters and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact them too as well if you want to get a deal on wholesale jewelry from Mexico from these women.